It's been a little bit since I've done a video like this. I'm going to be talking about high-end watches that sell for micro brand prices. These are really luxury watches that sell for a good price on the secondary market. A lot of them are from defunct brands or watches that are no longer made. But these are, again, very high quality luxury watches that sell for excellent prices. So without further ado, let's get into my number one pick. So the first brand that I want to talk about here is a brand that has been around for a little while. I believe they might be still in business. However, their watches aren't very popular. They use a lot of different case shapes and some really cool complications. They make automatic watches and they make quartz watches. Originally founded in 1888 under the brand Lafar. So this is not Lafar, this is actually Jean d'Yves. This is a sub-brand of Lafar, and this was meant to be their higher end watch brand. And they came out with a lot of really cool complications. Some of these watches are on sale on eBay for incredible prices. I'm talking about around $500 for some very interesting watches, and they go up from there depending on if you want an automatic version or if you just want a quartz version. But they are one of the few watch manufacturers that offer a double retrograde, so a retrograde hour and minutes, and you can get it in either a quartz or an automatic. The automatics go for around $2,000 and under, and if you want a quartz version, which looks almost exactly the same, you can get them for around $500 to $1,000 depending on the version that you're getting. They make them in a round case, which is a very traditional case, and then they make a really weird version that basically turns, so the entire movement is turned. Very, very distinctive looking. They also make a few other really weird watches. One reminds me a lot of a Vianney halter. They're using an auto quartz in this watch. It's got a circular case, really weird lugs, and a very traditional way of telling the time, but it looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. Auto quartz are very, very accurate and pretty reliable as long as the capacitor is still working. And then you have a quad retrograde, which is something that is a little bit rare as well, not something that you see every day. And again, these are affordable. So if you want something really cool, something very interesting, definitely check out this brand. The next is yet another brand that I've never featured here on my channel before, and it actually surprised me because I've always loved their watches. It's a jewelry brand that decided to make their own watches, but when they did, they went all in and made some amazing watches. I'm talking about the brand de Grisogono. These are very distinct looking watches that have a tank style, and they are powered by some very high grade movements. They actually went into very high complications right before they stopped making these watches. They started making very, very high end complications with digital mechanical displays and a couple of other really interesting, basically complications that you would never find on any other watch. These are watches that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they also made watches that cost in the $16,000 range that now sell for very good prices. In fact, you could pick up a lot of their watches sub $2,000, and these are watches that originally sold for around $14,000 to $20,000. Many of their less expensive watches, even though they were very expensive, featured an ETA 2892. However, not your run-of-the-mill ETA 2892. These were completely reworked and made into something very special. And a lot of times you could see these movements from the back. One of my favorite watches that they made was the FG model. This specific watch I think is extremely cool, and they sell for around $3,000 to $5,000 on eBay. Now these are kind of expensive, but what you are getting is a lot for your money here. This specific watch, the FG, is actually a jump hour, but it also has a double retrograde. So you're getting a retrograde hour and a retrograde seconds. You are getting that jump hour, of course, and it's a GMT. So down at the 6 o'clock position, you have a GMT function. But there's really two dials to this watch. You have the main dial, which is of course a circle, and at the bottom of that dial you have the GMT, and then you have the hours, which is the jumping hour, and then you have the minutes, which is retrograde. Below that there is a half circle, that's the retrograde seconds, and then you have a day-night indicator. But it doesn't really end there because the case is super special as well. Like I said, this is a tank style case, but they have put stripes through the case. They are vertical and it's engraved into the case. So there's a texture on the outside of the case. This is a watch that looks like nothing out there, and it looks a lot more expensive than they actually sell for. And these were expensive watches when they were being sold as new. But the fact that this has an ETA 2892 makes it pretty much a serviceable watch. So I think these are excellent buys on the secondary market. They made time onlys and they also made GMTs that were more traditional, but they still had these awesome cases with these very peculiar lugs. I really love these watches, and I think they are highly underrated and very overlooked. I've never seen anyone make a video about them except for maybe a blog to watch. I've never really seen any other information about these watches on the internet. Awesome, awesome watches. The next brand I have spoken about here on my channel in the past because I currently own two of their watches. It's Ventura. Now, this is not Hamilton Ventura. This is Ventura, the brand. This was a brand that was started in the 1980s. I believe it was like 1989, so on the cusp of 1990. This was a very modern brand for the time, and it still looks modern. And their designs have held up to the test of time. These do not look like old watches. If you release their entire lineup today, people would think they were designed yesterday because the designs are amazing. And like I said, I have two of their watches. They make some pretty robust watches that are really, really well made. They either make watches in titanium or in stainless steel. However, both of those materials are hardened. So they use hardened titanium or hardened stainless steel. They use some high-grade movements as well, usually off-the-shelf ETA movements, but usually really nice versions of those movements, and they are usually using the higher grades like 2892s. They also used auto quartz. I actually own one of their auto quartz versions. I have the Spark, and it's a very distinct watch that looks like nothing else that you've seen before. I recently did a video where I was talking about part of my collection, my affordable collection. This is an affordable watch. I paid $800 for it. It has an auto quartz rotor that you could see from the top of the case, and on the bottom of the case it's a digital display. So that auto quartz actually powers the digital display. They also made these more traditional in more traditional cases. You could see what the design language is here. They made digital watches that were super futuristic, and then they made more traditional round case watches that were still very futuristic and really well made, and they had some really awesome movements that they put inside as well. These were like one of the first independent brands that, again, is defunct now. They went out of business. They came back for a little while and then they went back out of business, unfortunately. I think this is such a good brand, and I love everything that they did, and I want to own more of their watches. I have one of their Sparks, like I was saying, and then I just recently bought a watch that I sold a very long time ago, probably going on 15 years ago, and I always regretted selling it, so I bought it again. I'll throw up a picture of the watch. I don't even remember the name. I think it's also called the Spark, an integrated bracelet sort of watch with a GMT movement. Corum is not a brand that I talk about very often here. However, they do make a watch that is an extreme bargain. And you can get these watches for around $6,000 to $7,000 in really good condition. They get a micro rotor movement that I believe is made by the brand Concepto, and I'm not 100% sure of that. I tried to find out information on these because they are no longer being made, but these are sort of like a Richard Mille-esque design. You have a tonneau shaped case. There is plastic that is actually integrated into the case, so it's rubber actually that is integrated into the case. There's a bunch of different colors that they're using for these, and I think originally these sold for around $20,000. The movements here are interesting because of their finishing. There's a bunch of different colors that they use in the movements as well. My favorite is the more straightforward versions with a standard black movement or silver movement. That micro rotor is really nice. And then you have a crown at the 6 o'clock position, which is something that you don't see every day. These are, again, an ultra modern design, really cool, very sporty. And I think for $6,000 or $7,000, you could probably get these cheaper if you're very patient. There's not a watch out there that you're going to get for this price that offers you what this watch is offering you. Titanium, a bunch of different design elements that you won't find anywhere else, especially a micro rotor skeletonized movement. Last but not least, a watch that I have been chasing for a very long time, and it's actually not just one watch, there's a few in the collection, but there's one specific watch that I really want to get, and I've been trying to get it for a really good price. These are Seikos, and they're the AGSs. AGS was basically the first kinetic movement. However, these were high-end watches made in titanium, and they were meant to be the cutting edge of the time. These were very expensive, and you know that because they have master in the name. So we're talking about the Land Master, the Scuba Master, Flight Master from Seiko. These were all auto quartz though, and there were a few GMTs that they offered, which are obviously true GMTs. So if you're looking for a Seiko that is a true GMT, they don't make them anymore at a reasonable price. You have to spend a lot of money to get a true GMT. These were true GMTs and they looked really good. Specifically the Flight Master, which is the SBC W005. You have a bicolored GMT bezel. It's a GMT movement, like I said, a flyer GMT with a beautiful textured dial in titanium. You have a really nice case back even on these watches. They're very, very embossed. Just a really cool watch that I think is super underrated. But it's the Scuba Masters that I really like because they were kind of wild for the time. The 015 in particular is a wild watch that has some really wild design cues. They have these hex screws on the lugs, really where the lug should be. Very reminiscent of the Marine Master, but super modern and super weird. You have an integrated bracelet, but you also have like an integrated bezel. I'm not even sure how these turn. I've never seen one in person. I've never seen anybody with one of these in person. The AGS are pretty rare, even though they are really awesome watches. It's kind of sad. They also made a field watch, which was the 001. So they all have the SBCW, the 001, which was a field watch, the 007, which is a GMT diver, I believe. So they made a lot of different versions of these, and they were basically a series, all of them in titanium, all of them awesome. And again, these start at around $500. That Scuba Master, the one that I really like, the 015, is a little bit more expensive, of course. So those come in at around $1,000 on the secondary market. But there's definitely times where these sell for less than that, and I've been keeping my eye out because I definitely want to own one of these watches. Tell me what you guys think about the list that I brought to you guys today. I do these videos from time to time to just show you guys some really awesome watches that you maybe never would come across otherwise. And this is how I collect. These are the type of watches that I find very interesting, so I love to bring you guys these so you could check them out as well. Maybe you'll find them interesting, and maybe we'll be competing on eBay, bidding on one of these watches in the future. I hope not, but you never know. Anyway, guys, tell me what you think down in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you for logging on. Thank you for watching this video. I'll catch you guys in the next video.